Welcome to the Education Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Alexandra, and today I'm joined by someone who deeply understands that education doesn't just happen in schools. It happens in homes, in hearts, and in everyday moments of connection. Lynda Allen is an educator, academic coach, and passionate advocate for parents. For over a decade, she ran the Make Your Mark in Life Learning Center, where she supported students and families in finding personalized, effective paths to learning. Along the way, she discovered something powerful, that when parents feel seen, supported, and empowered, everyone benefits, especially the child. Today, we're going to explore what it means to truly empower parents and why that matters now more than ever. Hello, Lynda. Thank you so much for joining me on Education Transformation. I'm really grateful for you and your time.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. I've been waiting a little bit to be able to get on.
Thank you for your patience also. Let's start, Lynda, with just talking a little bit about your journey and how your work with students led you to focus more deeply on supporting parents.
So I was a weird kid myself, and I just always felt different and not understood. And I'm kind of, but I think I was pretty smart back then, but I didn't think so. And I really questioned why people treated people that were different so awfully.
Hmm.
So when I was 13, there was this documentary on TV, and it showed what happened to children who were born with special needs and how they were put into an institution. It was so horrible to me that I made up my mind, turned to my parents, and said, hysterically crying, if it's the last thing I do, I'm going to close down those institutions.
Wow.
And here's where the weird part comes in, other than the weird part of me feeling different. I started volunteering with special needs kids and their families back then. And actually, the treat was because I did so many hours, like 5,000 hours by the time I graduated high school, it actually was my ticket into getting into college.
Wow.
Because in 1973, they talked about this law being passed that allowed special needs students, only the ones that were educable, but it was a start, to be able to get a public education. So I became one of the first special education teachers in the
Incredible.
United States. And then
Wow.
I went on to get my graduate degree in early intervention. And I
Mm.
was like one of seven in the nation. So this has been a huge mission for me. So now I'm in my fifth decade of working with students in this
Wow.
way.
Thank you for that dedication. I can't imagine that over the course of 5 decades, you are just a wealth of resources. And I'm sure that you have noticed some patterns along the way, which kind of lends me to my next question. What do you think most parents, or what did you observe? What patterns did you recognize of things that parents really needed, but they weren't getting from the traditional system?
Well, and that's a really, I want to say, even loaded question
Mm.
because when you are a parent in this, since I was a kid, since you were a kid, um, and when your kid was allowed to be in the school, we're pretty much taught that you're supposed to believe the teachers and you're supposed to follow. I mean, we don't really have much of a choice. In this day and age, we have other kinds of schools coming forward, and parents are able to have some other people to talk to. But especially when we started this, I mean, they had to be grateful for anything that they got given. So parents over time, it's almost like a societal way of thinking,
Mm,
is that a parent's job is not to be the teacher. And even though a parent keeps finding out that their child is just learning differently, when they're really seeing such differences that they can't even say, well, it's just like how we all learn differently, because everybody does. But
I
their
agree.
child is giving them so much concern, so much worry. And when they go to the teachers, when they go to the doctors, not a lot of people understand them.
Mm,
So that has been the biggest problem.
wow.
They have been forced to believe that the child is doing wrong. The
Mm,
child is not trying hard enough. And then before long, the parent feels like I have to get on board with that.
and no
So
parent
that to
wants to.
me has been the most
Mm,
painful for me. And that is why I have been the one to not only help the parents make the kind of decisions that they need to make, but to help them see that when I approach it in a more positive way with their student, with their child, when I approach it a different way with the teachers and the parent and the student present, that
mm.
they can do that too.
Yeah, that's powerful.
It's
So the
just such
parents
an
really
open.
wanted to be heard. They wanted somebody who understood what they were going through. And to add on to that, you were able to help them reframe what their experience was and see it as something positive and help them also understand what you said earlier, which is that really we all learn differently. And even though their children maybe had labels that were difficult for them to process, that in the big picture, neurodiversity is something that exists globally with all of us. Wow, that's really powerful. So I'm going to ask you next, what shifts have you seen when a parent begins to feel empowered or confident? Do you have any testimonies about when you equipped parents with that reframing and that support and they were seen by you? What kind of difference did you notice?
Mm, it's a good question. Um, I want to say that the majority of parents that have come to me to help their children in any way, I've worked with children that have mental health concerns. I've worked with children that have addiction issues. I've worked with parents that had the same. And I definitely have worked with students that learn differently on so many different levels. And the majority of parents, again, we're trained to believe this. You find the best doctor when there's a medical problem. In the case of parents, if they can't find someone, then they it becomes a whole other thing. So when they found me, what would happen is they would it wasn't always easy at the beginning, but when they saw the results, when slowly but surely I gave them enough information for them to feel empowered, for them to see that they can do the same. When I modeled for them how to work with the teachers in the schools and other therapists, even, or when I modeled for them what I did with their child, that is when empowerment happened. But even then, and this is something as a professional you just have to get used to. They just want to be grateful for that and go back to being the mother or the father. And that's what I really want to help them do too. So it's
Mm,
a different kind of a process, I think, We want to empower. When I think about empowerment, we want to empower parents enough to bring in, hire, assist, and support their child in the best way possible. That we want to help them grow them so that they could grow up to be trusting themselves, making a great living, having a great life, building great relationships, right? That's what we
Right.
want. That's an empowered parent to me.
Absolutely. So your journey back in 2013, I believe, began went on a different path. And correct me if I'm wrong, but is that when you started the Make Your Mark in Life Learning Center?
Oh, that was like in the middle 2000s. So
Oh,
I
okay.
started working at Make Your Mark Learning Center, and then I purchased it because it was all for like the kids that were in private school. And that doesn't cover all the students that are learning diverse. And by the way, when we used to talk about kids that had special needs and learning disabilities, that used to be like they used to say 1 in 150. Well, they're not talking like that anymore.
Mm,
They're talking like 1 in 5,
wow.
which is every year there's about 60 million students in the United States, pre-K through 12th grade, that are in school.
Mm,
And so of that, 20 to 25% of them are ones that have some level of learning difference that requires some different kind of training. That's 15 million.
wow. Those are big numbers.
Those are really big numbers. And so, how do you take care of all of those kids
Mm,
and make sure? So, we have been able to take care of the majority, and because the majority can kind of accommodate themselves to be able to fit into a traditional education that serves most.
hmm.
The difficulty is that those numbers are rising so much
Yes.
now, and we're just at the top, tippy top of identifying what these other learning differences are. And
Mm,
what's really surprising to most people is that that word neurodiversity is including anything that's really going on in the brain that's stopping the students from being able to easily and effortlessly come up with ways to get through the curriculum,
mm,
literally, to get the tasks done. So we're talking ADHD and
yeah.
ADD. We're talking dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. And we're talking these bigger, scarier labels of autism or Asperger's. So these are our gifted kids. These are just our kids that are learning differently enough that if we just accommodate those experiences, when we allow them to use their talents, their gifts, and their superpowers, everybody wins.
Oh,
And that
absolutely.
requires having kind of different levels, new envisioning for what education could look like.
Mm, wow, you are like music to my ears here with the with that last bit.
I know we
As you
both have
know,
this.
I have spent many years in the traditional system. So when you're sharing those numbers and talking about, percentages of students who are really approaching learning very differently, I'm thinking of my own experience and how it felt like every kid was not quite fitting into the box that the curriculum where a student could thrive if they were verbal linguistic and mathematical logical. They didn't have any behavior issues. They came from a perfect home where they were fully supported. Even that child um, would struggle with a curriculum, in my opinion, right? Because they're just being told this is what you have to do and this is how you have to do it and this is when you have to do it, and nobody likes that, and it doesn't flow with us naturally. But when we are invited to explore our strengths and we are given the opportunity to follow paths of our own curiosity and have a say in our learning journeys, I think all all of us have a greater buy-in. We tap into that intrinsic motivation, that innate curiosity, and what I believe is an innate desire for to learn and grow. So let me ask you this. I know that you supported so many students through your one-on-one tutoring and with coaching and the Learning Center. But if we just could say to teachers who are in the classroom right now,
Mhm.
and they don't maybe have you, we can tell
Right.
them how to get in touch with you later. But what advice would you give a teacher now who's has a classroom full of kids who are all learning differently and are differently abled? Are there any little tips or hints that you could just suggest that could help the everyday teacher in a traditional classroom?
My first thing would be is that they need to keep on learning.
Mm,
They
I
need to
love
keep on
that.
learning. The thing is that we're living in a very different time. It's scary what's happening, especially in the United States right now. There's no doubt with what's happening with education. But change doesn't happen when things are going well or when
Mm,
things are just going okay. Change happens when people are noticing that change needs to happen. And many people don't realize this, but the law that happened in the United States back in 1975, where that's when they allowed public school to be an option, again, not for every special needs kid, but eventually it was for every special needs child, which is another thing to talk about. But um, we didn't have resources, we didn't have things. Parents were the ones that made that happen. And I believe parents are going to be the ones, which are many of those educators,
mhm,
those are going to be the ones that are going to make this happen here too. And the reason they're going to make that happen is because they are sharing their experiences. I took 6 classes to become a special educator. The majority of my education was self learned, and it was elementary education. Today, there are many hundreds, I would even say thousands of parent led, professional led, definitely educator led, therapists, doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs. All these people are in there creating programs for this population. It is at our fingertips. At
mhm.
this point, I'd have to say we've gone the opposite way. Instead of depriving parents and other professionals of the information, we have so much information, it's really difficult for everybody to get that. So, an
Yeah.
educator, if they could just find the time to try to tap into some of that information and just make incremental changes, just like we would tell a parent,
Mm,
rely on other educators that are doing that, that are sharing that information, can make all the difference in the world because they're in the power seat in their classroom. Yes,
right.
they have to follow these rules and things that are going on, but that doesn't change that doesn't prevent them the way they connect with and teach the children.
Mm, absolutely. And if we wanted to help, if you wanted to give some advice to schools or educators, how they could better partner with parents, because you and I both well know that the child needs the whole village, right, to help
Yes.
them be the best versions of themselves. And teachers are certainly overburdened with checking a lot of boxes in the traditional system, many of which don't directly support the children. So
Mhm.
I think if we could advise them, and maybe you could give us some suggestions for how can the schools or educators better partner with parents.
Mhm. Okay, so this might not be the answer you'd expect either. My belief is that any educator that would be listening to this, they're already doing that.
Mm.
They're right.
That's
And
fair.
the ones that are not are because they don't even they for whatever reason, personal or professional, where they live, what's going on, it doesn't even come up as they're just trying to do the best they can with what they've got. I truly believe that it's going to be parents that really, when parents learn how to collaborate, when parents realize that the stigma of having a child who is needy, who is different, does not have to stay that way. That when they are demonstrating inclusivity, when they are demonstrating a different way of seeing, when they are presenting that, just like the way I did when I first started, showing the parents that's the way they can become empowered and empower everyone around them.
Wow, I really love that. It reminds me of teach a man to fish instead of giving him a fish for food,
One
right?
of my favorite, one of my favorite sayings in
Sounds
my
like exactly
teaching.
what you are doing. So let's see. Is there any message that you have that could encourage every parent listening right now? Any words from you that would just ignite in them, or just something simple to encourage?
Yes, this is what I believe. I believe that when we can change our mind,
Mm,
when we can be open to what's possible,
mm.
when we can like get to that place of I know what I know and I don't know what I don't know.
And be
And
okay with
really
it, right?
live right and live in a place of like awe and curiosity when
Mm.
it comes to our kids.
Ah,
I think we will experience possibilities, opportunities, magic, and miracles that we would never have believed possible.
Oh, wow. I couldn't agree with you more, really. I know you've been learning a little bit about the Always Meaningful Education model, and I've been delighted to have some conversations with you about our connection. But for our audience at home, what are some of the things about AME that resonates with you and your work?
I just love that you're getting to explore with the population that is so open to having a different way of working with all of our kids. So you're with that, I've said to you, I want to believe in the 80-20 rule here, that at least 20% of the population is really ready for micro schools and hubs and online learning and homeschooling in places like you, right? Like I want to believe it's going to be growing 20, 30%, 40%, 50%. But I love that. And I love that in your way, you're empowering those parents to make these great decisions and stand by them because you're giving them the tools, right? That's what's happening. And I think that with your work and my work working together, what we get to show is that every parent can create the best education experience for their learning different child. So you're
Absolutely.
just fitting right into my program that I've created called Empowered Parents Creating the Best Education Experience for Their Learning Different Child. And that's what I'm hoping will happen all over the world.
As am I, Lynda. And that was going to be my next question, just to tell our audience, how can they connect with you? I have seen your website, and it is an amazing, an incredible, perhaps the best comprehensive place for resources for parents in absolutely every topic that you can think of. But please tell the audience about Empowered Parents and how they can reach out to you.
So, Empowered Parents, this long name, because it really says what it's about. That started out just as a desire. Actually, during the pandemic, I just wanted to be able to work with more families and make a difference in the world. So I've created this online program that is really inexpensive. It can even be gifted, and it's just a 5-hour experience. It's like a personal growth adventure for parents.
That's exciting.
It is, isn't it? Where they get it's really 4 simple steps. Well, simple, but not always as easy to do as we'd like, right? Because it is personal transformation for
Mm,
you as a parent and your child. First part, first step is to become very clear about what you dream, what you wish, what you want for your child,
mm,
and to identify what your dream role is for them in their life. The
wow.
second thing is to get really clear about what's going on. This system works for even if you have a problem like a medical problem. You do the same steps. You identify what are the problems, what are the situations, what are the challenges that you need to be looking for solutions for. The third step is becoming aware of these many thousands of resources that I'm talking about that are available now that we didn't have before.
Yes.
And fourth is pulling together a team, a tribe, a group, a village to be able to help raise your child.
Mm.
Sometimes that's one person, a Mrs. Lynda, other time or Mrs. Alexandra, right? So sometimes that's all you need. But other times we need a hope all through their lives. And what does that teach them too?
Mm.
So it's there. It's you have a guide workbook journal that takes you through that. I'm turning that into a book as well,
Oh, wonderful.
soon to be on the market soon. And I'm spending the rest of the time trying to get the information out so it becomes really available. And I'm working very collaboratively to demonstrate what that looks like with all of these, many of these resources. And that's what you'll see on the website also. I have vetted all this information and resources on a directory of programs like AME is on there to be able to help people see what kind of resources are available for them out there. So you could reach me on that. So I'm doing everything I can. Oh, and I'm going to be on a TEDx talk in November and be
Wow,
able to share
congratulations.
that. So hopefully my YouTube channel is going to start growing with lots of these kind of talks. So I'm so grateful that I was able to be on here. So you can reach me at makeyourmarklearningcenter.com.
Wow, Lynda, thank you really so much. I encourage everyone to check out your website. The resources again are really well organized and powerful, meaningful, very relevant and helpful. So thank you. And for all of the decades that you have dedicated to understanding how we can help parents to help their children. And I know you've also been directly helping many children and families, and I'm sure all of them are grateful for you as well. Yay! I'm so excited for your book to come out. I can't wait to see your TED Talk. I'm looking forward to checking out your fireside chat, which I know you also had one of those
Did that.
recently. And
Mhm.
yeah, just thank you, Lynda. Really, you are a treasure, and I'm so grateful that our
Mhm.
paths have crossed.
Me too. It takes one to know one.
All right, we shall end now, yes?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to end the recording. Stop.
Was that good?
I think so.